Summary of Homage to Catalonia by George Orwell. George Orwell leaves England for Spain in December 1936, when a violent civil war is raging. Orwell sees the war in Spain, like most people around the world, as a fight between freedom and fascism. He agrees to fight for the Republicans, which is a group of left-leaning, pro-democracy parties, against the Nationalists, which is a group of conservative, Catholic, right-leaning people led by General Franco. When he gets to Barcelona, he is shocked to find that the city is in the middle of a big social change. All of the buildings have communist and anarchist flags flying from them. All of the shops have been taken over by the government, and everyone treats each other as if they are exactly the same. It looks like the bourgeois have all but vanished, and the working class seems to be running the city. Orwell is more sure than ever that he made the right choice to fight for such a good cause because of the environment of equality and freedom. He soon joins the POUM military, a Marxist group with ties to the anarchists, and is sent to the front. The POUM is based on the idea that everyone should be treated equally. This means that differences in rank don't matter, and troops are free to disagree with orders from their leaders. Orwell agrees with these ideas, but he also knows that most of the army is made up of young, inexperienced Spanish candidates. He is disappointed by how weak the group is and doubts that the military will be able to keep order and win the war. But what he knows from his own life changes this first opinion. Over time, Orwell comes to admire the POUM for its ability to make its soldiers loyal and committed and to make them feel like they are part of the political process. Even though the military isn't very good at what it does, Orwell comes to the conclusion that the POUM is a good example of how an ideal, classless society can work. In the meantime, things have stayed the same at the front. Because the terrain is hard to navigate and there aren't enough supplies, troops spend most of their time worried about how to stay alive rather than fighting the enemy. Attacks don't happen very often, so Orwell spends his days gathering fuel instead of getting ready for war. Ironically, mistakes made by other soldiers are more likely to cause deaths than enemy fire. In this situation, where the war seems to be nothing but waiting for days on end, Orwell starts to lose faith in the noble purpose of the war and the value of his commitment. In April 1937, Orwell gets permission to go back to Barcelona after spending 4.5 months at the front. This event changes the way he thinks about the war as a whole. In just a few months, the city went from being a place where the working class ran everything to a normal place where poverty and class differences are once again clear. There is also a lot of political conflict in the city between groups on the left. In May, this stress quickly turns into violence when the POUM and the communists start fighting, turning the city into a maze of barricades. The Communist Party uses this chance to accuse the POUM of being fascist rebels in the media. Orwell is shocked to learn that the Communist Party doesn't always act in a fair way and sometimes changes the truth to get rid of its political foes. He sees that there are more political differences on the Spanish left than he thought at first, and that these differences could make it harder for the Republicans to fight the Nationalists. So, Orwell soon loses all hope that Spain can keep its democracy. Orwell goes back to the front a few days after the shooting has stopped. There, he is surprised to find that life goes on as normal and that the soldiers don't seem to know how bad things are on the home front. Orwell is shot in the neck by a fascist shooter while he is talking to a colleague one day. He is taken to a hospital, where when doctors finally look at his injury, they say he will never be able to talk again, which turns out to be wrong. Orwell gets hurt and has to go back to Barcelona, where there are now deep political differences that have turned into hate, fear, and doubt. When he goes to their hotel to meet his wife, she freaks out and tells him to hide right away. She says that the Spanish government has made the POUM illegal, which means that anyone who is part of the POUM is now being sent to jail. This political rule of terror makes Orwell very angry. A lot of his friends and people he looked up to are arrested and sent to jail. He doesn't understand how the government can afford to lock up healthy people who are badly needed at the front during a war. After hiding for several days, Orwell and his wife were finally able to leave the country in June 1937. They did this by getting on a train early in the morning. The couple runs away to France to get away from the chaos of war. Once he is back in a safe place, Orwell thinks about how much the Spanish Civil War has changed him. More than the hatred and cruelty of politics in Barcelona, what struck him was the atmosphere of his everyday life as a militiaman and what he saw as the courage and honor of people fighting at the front lines of the war. Because of the brave people he has met, he feels hopeful and has a strong belief in the decency of human beings. When he gets back to England, he is surprised by how quiet and far away the country is from the war. After seeing the excitement of the Spanish Revolution, he wonders if the only thing that will ever make England more politically aware and more aware of the wrongs in the world will be the roar of bombs. This is a dark hint at the violence that World War II will bring. Orwell talks about the complicated politics of Spain in two appendices that are not part of the main story. In Appendix I, he explains how the different groups in the Republican alliance have different ideas. He says that the left-wing groups' fights with each other, which he thought at first were not that important to the war, ended up being stronger than the Republicans' desire to fight the fascists. Orwell says that the pro-communist media and foreign players defended narrow political interests that hurt and split the Spanish left in the end. Orwell comes to the conclusion that the Spanish Civil War was never a fight for democracy. Instead, it was a chance for parties to show who was in charge of the political game. In Appendix II, Orwell looks closely at the news stories written about the fighting in Barcelona in May 1937. He does this to show how the media can be used to serve the political interests of certain groups. He says that writers are wrong when they give wrong information, contradict themselves, make stuff up, and write stories that don't tell the truth about what happened. Because of these bad practices, the POUM, which doesn't have much sway with the press, can't defend itself against treason charges, no matter how false they might be. Orwell says that making the POUM the victim in this way made the anti-fascist alliance even weaker in the end.
About the author. Eric Blair was born in India and lived there as a child. He went to school in England at Eton. From 1922 to 1927, he worked in Burma for the Indian Imperial Police. Through his autobiographical writing about being poor, down and out in Paris and London, 1933, in colonial Burma, Burmese Days, 1934, in the Spanish Civil War, Homage to Catalonia, 1938, and the plight of unemployed coal miners in England, The Road to Wigan-Pier, 1937, Blair, who wrote under the name George Orwell, exposed and criticized the human tendency to oppress others politically and economically. Orwell's political views changed in a clear way when he wrote Homage to Catalonia. His time in the Spanish Civil War made him realize how important revolutionary socialism was. This made him a loud critic of the Communist Party, which was ruled by the USSR, as well as any kind of political oppression. In 1947, a lung infection he got in Burma got worse, and in 1950, at the age of 46, Orwell died of tuberculosis.
Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.